All right, we are live from Doak Campbell Stadium and from South Florida for the Osceola's first impressions of Florida State's 27-20 win over arch rival Miami on Saturday afternoon in Doak Campbell Stadium. My name is Pat Burnham, and I am joined by former FSU offensive lineman Mark Salva and Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein. Guys, have you caught your breath yet?
Yep.
Hey.
Mark hasn't.
Mark's still out hanging out with the band, having a good time. Mark, what was it like in Doak Campbell Stadium tonight?
We tell you something. It was it's about as electric as it could be. I mean, I was in the Champions Club, and every seat pretty much was taken. It was unbelievable. It was loud, and when the lights went down, the LEDs started happening. It was good. I mean, great energy, tomahawk chop in full go. I mean, it was really a great atmosphere. I think it's about as good as it can get.
Fish, what was it like watching it on TV at home?
Typical Miami Florida State game. You know, a lot of intensity, guys playing hard, running fast, a lot of athletes. What you expect, pretty much what I thought the game would be, when we first started discussing the game over the past week.
Yeah, listen, I think I know you and I, at least when we did our predictions for the game, both you and I thought it would be within a touchdown. And obviously, these games are not meant to be pretty. These are rivalry games, and not everything's going to go as planned. But FSU started fast in the first quarter. Fish, I know that was a key for you. Obviously, Miami countered in the second half, second quarter to bring it back to 10-10 at the half. And then really, Florida State had a very strong second half performance to get to hold off for a 27-20 win. The offense had 196 yards of total offense in the second half after being held to 1 yard in second quarter. And obviously the defense was dominant, only gave up 155 second half yards after giving 126 yards up in the second quarter alone. Fish, what were your thoughts on offense today?
It's been a theme all year. They've come out and kind of had slow first halves, and then the talent takes over in the second half. Keon Coleman, they haven't paid him enough. He's worth every dollar of NIL money that you could give the kid.
Yeah, Mark, what were your thoughts on the offense?
It went about like I thought it would. Struggled to run the ball, and we hit on a few big ones, big plays. But I mean, the inconsistency running the ball kind of put us behind a little bit a few times. Johnny Wilson on those comebacks and the quick outs and that kind of stuff was good throws. And then, I mean, really the difference was Keon Coleman, punt return, touchdown pass. That was, and let me tell you something, Trey Benson, what a gear, right? I mean, that run, I was in that end zone, and that was a thing of beauty. When he broke through there and outran everybody, I was like, man, that was something. And at that point, I was like, you know what, that defense looked tired. And it was, and that was kind of my deal going into the game. I thought that we could wear them down in the second half, really take advantage of it. It started to go that way, but, and when Benson made that run, but then it just seemed to kind of bog down on offense again. And look, credit to Miami. You knew they were going to do really well. They did load the box. They played press man all night. And made it really difficult. And, they dialed up a couple of pressures that gave us trouble, when they were in that three-man rush with the two linebackers and twisting those linebackers all kinds of ways. And Jordan had to hold the ball a little bit with their coverage, and that got home. So, I mean, look, it was like this game always is. It's a war, right? It's not to equate war with a football game, but, I mean, you got the impression that those guys – gave everything they got on both sides. So I got to give credit to Miami as much as I hate to do it. They played hard.
Well, listen, I think we knew it was going to be a dogfight, and that's what it turned out to be. You mentioned Trey Benson, 16 carries for 80 yards, average 5 yards a carry for the course of the game. And I'm going to tell you what, guys, those were hard arm yards, and he ran extremely hard tonight. And, of course, he was certainly buoyed by the fact that Johnny Wilson returned 5 catches for 82 yards, and obviously the Kai Douglas catch for a touchdown was huge. I'm sorry, not the long pass. It wasn't a touchdown, but a long pass, 69. I think yards. That was a key play in the game. But yeah, I thought the offense did it enough to win. Jordan Travis, 19-31, 265 with one touchdown. And I think the story of the day was probably the defense and really Alex Mastromanno, who I think 5 of Miami's drives in the game started inside their own 20.
Yeah, that he was a weapon now. My son's a golf pro, and I looked at him. I said, "I bet he's pretty good at golf." I mean, those punts were on point, man. And look in the defense, the second half. I mean, look, that we were on the way to shutting them out. We were 2 scores up, and they didn't have a prayer. And then I was watching the front, so I don't know what happened in coverage. I guess you guys can talk about it. All I know is I look over after the ball's thrown, I see 2 of our guys on the ground and their guy running towards the end zone. So I wasn't even sure what happened there. But it looked to me like be some kind of freak kind of thing. So, I mean, outside of that, the defense dominated the second half. And because they weren't running. And I was shocked about how ineffective Miami was running the football in the second half. I mean, they were stuffing them pretty good. And that was good to see. I was glad to see that. Because that gives us hope for that last game. Because, they're going to try to do a similar kind of thing in the last game of the year. And if we can stuff the run like that, that bodes well going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, Miami was finished with 131 total yards of rushing, and they had about 75 of those on the long scoring drive in the second quarter. So you're right, Florida State did shut them down in the second half, and I believe they had 4 3-and-outs in the second half and 2 other drives that were 5 plays or less. And then obviously the touchdown that you referred to was a pass down the sideline where Knowles took a bad angle and kind of knocked Cypress off the play. And obviously he would go down for a score. But, just what did you see from the defense, Fish and Mark, that made it so dominant in the second half?
I think it was Miami's inability to really throw the ball past 10 yards. You have a freshman quarterback. This is why when people are like, "Oh, throw the freshman in there," they're really not ready. Henry Williams will be a very good quarterback in the next couple of years, but it's a lot to ask. Florida State was mixing up the coverages, and they really weren't able to stretch the field. And that was a big concern of mine for Miami in this game, was that they didn't have that Keon Coleman or somebody that could stretch the field. They have a bunch of possession receivers out there. And when you can't stretch the field, you start to see those heavy boxes. Florida State was able to shut down the run in the second half, and not being able to pass is a bad combination. It was a fluke play with what happened with Knowles running into the FSU defender, and the guy just happened he threw a perfect ball for 2 guys to run into each other, like hit Jacoby perfectly in the hands. And he kind of stopped for a second to see what happened. And then he caught himself, and then he took off and ran. And it was kind of a fluky play. So.
Mark, to your point, Florida State held Miami to 35 yards rushing in the second half, only 5 of 19 passing, had 120 yards passing in the second half. 85 of those yards were on one play. What did you see from the defense in the second half?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it was really dominant up front. They brought some run blitzes on early downs, and I thought that was a great strategy. Shaheem Brown running in there off the edge on early downs, trying to get them behind the chains. I was wanting them to do that to start the game, but they ended up doing it, and that was good. So loading the box. We played a lot of man under. There at the end, especially. And let me tell you something, the coverage. So that last play with Van Dyke on 4th down, you need to watch. I was watching Restrepo, and because they had him stacked over there. And I can't remember. I know it wasn't Jerry and Jones. Well, I guess he got the pick, but he wasn't throwing at him. But that's who Van Dyke was looking at. He was looking at Restrepo, and they had him bracketed perfect. He was trying to wiggle, juke, and do all these things, but they played it perfect. And when Van Dyke had to come off it and start rolling out, everybody stuck to their guy. I mean, it was really, really good coverage. And so I got to give credit to the secondary because they were all over it. And even the catches they were making were contested catches and underthrows right there at the very end. But that's as Fishy say, well, they couldn't throw it 10 yards downfield. I was watching the pass rush, And if he would have held it anymore, they're getting ready to get home. I mean, those guys were getting pretty close, but they weren't holding on to the ball, so they had to throw it quick. I mean, it was just a really good job. The defense was really dominant in my eyes, especially the second half.
Yeah, listen, we talked about one of the keys to the game, and for this game, we'd seen a lot of improvement in FSU's secondary since the Clemson game, and obviously, well, a lot of that probably has to do with the return of Akeem Dent. We've talked a little bit about that, but Miami came into this game top third in the nation in passing offense, showed no semblance of being able to throw the ball. So the secondary was certainly validated. Were you guys surprised as much as Miami was having trouble throwing the ball with Emory Williams that they did not go to Tyler Van Dyke in the second half earlier before Williams' injury? Fish, I'll start with you.
No, I think Tyler's done mentally. There's something wrong with him. One, I don't think he's healthy, but he has not looked good the last few weeks. And I just think that the coaching staff at Miami lost confidence. And the one thing when you watch Emory, for a freshman, and Mark can probably tell you this, you'll see if you watch the replay, he never looks shook on TV. He looks like a kid that has confidence. He believes in what the coaches are giving him. And most guys at that age, you've seen it before. I mean, heck, we saw J.J. Constantino come into a game and he was shaking both legs. So you could tell that that's one thing that impressed me early on. And when I saw him in their spring game, is this kid does not get shook. And it was a big playing at Florida State in that crowd, in that environment, playing against that defense, really in his only second start. He performed pretty well considering the situation. I don't think you could ask much more. They don't have deep threats. Miami, Mark probably saw it. They don't have guys that could get open down the field. I've seen Miami play once live. I've watched 2 or 3 of their games. Restrepo is really a number 4 or 5, but he's their number 1 receiver. If he's like a third, maybe a 3, possibly a 4, but when he's your number 1 guy, he's small and he's not real fast, and he does not get open really well. I mean, he does catch everything, but everything's a 50-50 ball when Restrepo gets the ball thrown his way. So I think it's easier to defend them, especially when I'm sure their playbook wasn't really wide open with a freshman quarterback out there. So I think overall, from his standpoint, Miami coaches are probably pretty happy with the way he performed until he went down with the injury.
Yeah, listen, Restrepo came in. He'd been targeted 80 times this season. 60 of those went for catches. Left this game with 0 catches for the game. Obviously, Florida State's defensive plan was to take him out of the game, and they did that. Mark, my question to you is, obviously, early in the season, we were concerned about the pass defense. They've played really good the last 6 games, the totality of the defense, both against the run and against the pass. How do you feel about this defense as Florida State inches closer to the ACC title game and potentially a college football playoff berth?
You're right. The last several games, they look much improved. The communication bus and the guys running open on the motions and the shifts and all that, they've got that part fixed. So you don't see the guys running free like you did first couple of games of the year. So that part for sure. Looks like that 8 and 7 and 20 play a lot today. Obviously 23, but I tell you what, they seem to have that part down. So now they weren't facing Bill Walsh's West Coast offense either. So there wasn't a whole lot to defend. It was pretty. You knew what they were going to do. They don't have a lot of offense in terms of the passing game. So there really wasn't a whole lot to really prepare for and to even try to trick you up. So, but like I said, nobody has here in the last several weeks. So, all you can do is play what's in front of you. So going into with Louisville, I'm sure they'll have a little more sophisticated passing game. That'll be interesting. It'll be a nice little, war of wills. But that's 3 games from now. I'm not going to worry about that right now.
Yeah. Well, listen, FSU was very balanced, Mark. We've talked about the importance of staying committed to the run game in the past. It was not going very well. I mean, obviously Jordan Travis had 2 huge sacks, which took a lot of yards off the the total yardage for Florida State, which at the end of the game, it looks bad. 31 rushes for 1.8 yards, but that includes sack yardage. How key did you think it was that Mike continued with the run game and had a 50-50 split run to pass throughout for the game?
They did load the box, but they played a lot of what you call bear front, where they cover the guards, nose guard, single linebacker, but then they had pressure off the edges and a lot of stunts out of it. But, that's not necessarily a front you can't run on. And I believe Trey's run popped on against a bear front, but it's also weak in a couple areas for the running game. So the fact that they stuck with it because they're trying to pop a few things didn't surprise me. I thought that was the right call, honestly, because there was a few runs there from my point of view. It looked like they were, just a shoestring tackle away from popping. I think LT had one that was really close. I love the option that was a nice little run there. This little speed option, that was good. So, yeah, that was the right call. Even though we struggle, running the ball. I mean, the thing that surprised me was that last sack. Pressure up the middle like that. That tells me I have to think that was a communication error. Which that hasn't happened in a long time with these guys up front. So that kind of surprised me a little bit. But I thought overall the protection, considering what they were bringing, with the heat they were bringing, I thought the protection held up okay.
Well, I tell you what, I thought the front seven on FSU's defense as well held up pretty good. They really got, as you said, I was very surprised that Miami couldn't run the ball. And the linebackers, Mark and Fish, continue to play well. DJ Lundy shows up every time there's a run play. They got gashed a couple times because going to the wrong gap. But I mean, what are your thoughts on these linebackers after 10 games and the improvement they've made since day one?
Well, it's a major weakness of the team coming into the season, and question marks. You always question that you really only had two guys. Like you said, Lundy's actually been productive this year. It helps, especially as you get into the playoffs. You need those linebackers. You don't want to have to go you're going to go against a Georgia or an Ohio State or a Michigan. You're going to need bigger size. You're not going to want to have you're going to want to have probably three linebackers on the field when you're playing those teams. It's very important moving forward that those guys are playing at a higher level.
Mark, what are your thoughts on linebacker play through 10 games?
Yeah, they're getting better. That Lundy performing has been a welcome deal. Look, early in this game there were a few missed tackles where they got some run yardage. I think some of them might have been safeties. I don't know. I got to look back at it. My point of view couldn't really see it all the time. But all that being said, look, they've gotten better. Really, for me, the linebacker play concern early in the year was in the pass coverage where a lot of those busts were happening. But turns out they've got that fixed. And look, they're plugging the holes now. There was some good second half. It looked like good team defense to me. I mean, they mucked it up. Front guys got off the ball. Linebackers were plugging holes. Safeties, rushing the edge. I mean, it was a good performance there in the second half for sure.
Yeah, and another thing I thought was key to this game, we talked a little bit about our keys to a win for FSU on Friday. We talked about the emotion of a ball game like this. Really, both teams played fairly well. There was only one personal foul penalty for kind of talking back and forth. FSU, though, really clean, 3 penalties for 35 yards. Mark, just talk about you played in this game. Talk about how hard it is to have that discipline play in and play out with as much chirping and things of that nature.
Say it again.
Just talk about the cleanness of Florida State with only 3 penalties for 35 yards in a game like this.
Well, I'm not surprised. I fully expected that to happen. I was talking to some coaches yesterday, and they really, the comment I heard was Mike really does a good job of getting in the team's head, and these messages about having poise, about not, reacting to the other team. It really resonates. They really take it in and internalize it. A lot of coaches, they say that stuff and players roll their eyes or whatever, but Mike has a really innate ability to really get to these guys. And so I'm not surprised at all that they played a clean game. And look, it was always a point, and it was just, 3-4 years ago, it was always a problem for us. Doing things that winning football teams don't do is, penalties and stuff. And if we were ever going to turn the corner, that was going to have to be something that was really cleaned up. And, that was a priority. And it obviously the team has done that.
Yeah, now I got one question for both of you. I know, Mark, you're fixing to probably leave us because you're learning how to juice on that phone. But listen, no harm, no foul, right? But what did you think about the onside kick to start the second half by Mike and go down, end up going down 13-10?
You know what? It was there. It was there because when he did it and they showed the replay, you can see the two guys start running inside. That ball seemed to hang in the air forever.
Yes,
right? It hung in the air forever. I don't know if the wind caught it right or because there was a backspin. I don't know, but man, if that thing would have not take that big old bounce, they had it. They really did. But it just hung in there forever. And it took forever to get across the 10. So you know what? It's one of those calls. One of those calls that are worse. It's great. If not, you got a problem, right? And so that got him back in the back in the game, gave him the lead briefly, and it was what it was.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I was kind of surprised. I actually said to Kurt sitting here, do you think there's any chance that Michael tried onside kick to start the half? And I said it kind of jokingly. But Mike he's a risk taker. He's aggressive. Fish, what were your thoughts on that?
I think that's a panic move. I know they said they worked on it. I wouldn't have done it. I just think Florida State's a better team. Why even give them a chance to be in the game? You're pretty much. You can control the tempo. You can control everything. Florida State, there's no reason to give Miami any hope in a game. And if it doesn't work, if Miami scores a touchdown there, I think once again you're trying to come from behind. I'm not a fan of what they did.
All right, Mark, one last question. If you still got some juice.
Yeah, I got about 4%. Keep going.
You got North Alabama next week. Obviously, that's not going to be much of a game. How much confidence can Florida State get out of this game, get ready to go on the road to Florida in 13 days?
Yeah, so this game is all about winning. It's not about style points. Yep. It's not about anything else. It's about, winning the game because it's going to be a hard-fought, well-executed game on both sides. There's a lot of pride on the line. Both teams have a lot of pride. And so that's all you try to do. And I got that feeling that was the goal, is just win the game, screw the style points. That doesn't matter because if we win them all, we're in anyways. So, yeah, it gives them confidence. You can play a 4-quarter game. I bet, our key guys played more snaps than probably they've played all year. And, that gives them a little confidence going in. So, yeah, so they're making me leave.
Okay, all right. I was going to ask you one more question about the block by Washington and Morlock on the long run by a 38-yard run by Benson on the counter.
Yeah, I saw that run, and it was there. I didn't see the replay a whole lot, but yeah, it was good stuff.
All right,
they're running me out.
Go have a victory drink. I'll talk to you a little bit later.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Go Noles.
Fish, we'll move this to off the field now. Listen, they had a ton of big-name prospects in town this weekend, including Cam Coleman and Jeremiah Smith, although Kai Bates, who's committed to LSU. Obviously, Cam Coleman's committed to Texas A&M. What kind of impact do you think a win like this will have in the state of Florida as it pertains to recruiting, as we really are about a little more than 6 weeks out from early National Signing Day?
It can only help. Listen, Florida State has a lot to sell. We've always talked about this, and I've talked to Jerry about this. I always laugh. Kids in the state of Florida want to go to Florida State. The only reason they don't go there is you give them a reason not to want to go there. You look at Kai Bates. Here's a top-rated DB. He already sees that they've got a bunch of good DBs coming in. Why not be part of the number one DB class in the country? That's what they're going to sell. He's got to see what they put on the product on the field, that he's probably better than some of the guys they actually have out there starting, his potential. I'm not saying right now,
right,
but these guys have a chance to improve on what Florida State is right now and make them even better. So I think it gives them a great opportunity to go out and sell the program, and wins like this in an atmosphere. You've been in that stadium when it's electric. I remember going up for the Oklahoma game that year, even though FSU lost. It's a great stadium to go watch a game when it's a big time game. and the game means something.
Yeah, listen, this place was rocking. I mean, usually we're kind of muted in here in the press box. Obviously, there's some open windows towards the end of the press box, but this stadium was packed. It was loud, and it was electric, as Mark said, for most of the night, and nobody went home with this one, man. So what are your thoughts as Florida State? Obviously, we asked Mark about Florida. How do you think this impacts maybe even some of the recruiting against Florida, as obviously these guys are always going to be head-to-head against each other? And I was actually asked by somebody today that they thought L.J. McCray might still be in play. Have you heard anything like that?
Well, I definitely think it helps with those guys. But if you look, I talked to you about this before. There has to be some interest, like FSU and Florida, even though they're going after L.J. McCray and they're also going after the defensive back. If you look at Florida's class, there aren't a lot of head-to-head guys that they've gone after or shown interest. So unless there's that interest from before, like an L.J. McCray, or you also have, the defensive back from Mainland, those type of kids, those guys you're going to have a shot at. And these type of games, as Florida State continues to win, you saw it with Timmy Jernigan. Timmy Jernigan was a heavy Florida lean for a long time, and then all of a sudden Florida State got some momentum. They beat Florida. He was in the locker room. He felt like he was part of the team after that win. And, you look at that, and that changed that kid's mind. So, yeah, you recruit these kids till the end. Just because a kid commits, until they sign on that dotted line, that doesn't mean anything. So I definitely think it will help them. Florida State needs help on the defensive line. I think if there's one part of the recruiting class this year is that, you're like, all right, it's a very, very good class, but they definitely can improve one area. I definitely think it's a D-line.
Yeah, and you're going to be obviously losing Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, and obviously Farmer has a chance to come out if he wants. I think everybody's hoping that he doesn't. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they replace those guys. But I think a win like this obviously may turn some heads, particularly with when you've got your other two in-state programs not having the season that you're having. So I definitely think it helps. Fish, we're gonna miss you tomorrow, man. We're gonna be outside the Moore Center all day, waiting to talk to some of these guys as they leave after their unofficial visits. We're hoping to see upwards of 20 or so kids. So we'll definitely be in touch with you as we get information from them, and obviously, so that's.
I just played a violin for you.
I know. Listen, it's going to be a beautiful fall day, a high of 70 degrees, and we're going to split it up into shifts and be out there as long as these recruits are here. So it is going to be a fun day. But listen, it's going to be a fun weekend as Florida State moves to 10-0 on the season with a 27-20 win over Miami behind a really dominant second half performance, and particularly by the defense, who really just shut Miami down outside of one play to move to 10-0. And it's going to be a fun weekend for Tallahassee. It's a hard-earned win. Fish, you and I's score predictions were pretty good, man. You had 27-23, 23-17, and I had 27-25.
Well, you know how these rivalry games go. I mean, anytime, especially I remember back when Greg Jones had that big game, 199 yards. Miami had won real big the year before. I think going into the game, Miami was a 12 or 13-point favorite, and FSU was leading most of the game. There's a lot of pride. Guys knew what happened last year. Kids quit on that team. And, Mario played against Florida State, so you knew that game was going to be within a touchdown, 10 points, if you were a realistic Florida State fan that has experienced this series enough times. I've seen it too many times to sit there and go, oh, this game's going to be a blowout. We've seen it too many times. So.
Yeah. Well, listen, I thought the same thing coming in, that they were going to even with the freshman quarterback. And I was shocked that they started. And I understand that Van Dyke may not be totally healthy, and that's part of it. And I've heard about his confidence being shaken, but the ball comes out of his hand a little bit differently. We saw that in the few plays he was in the game. So I was actually surprised that he did not pull him. But listen, Florida State did what it had to do. It was not pretty. And these games, as we've talked about, these games are not going to be pretty, but they actually,
just got to win.
Yeah, all that matters. And listen, I think there's a lot of – we talked about this on Friday. There's some pressure with these games, right? Because Florida State knows it needs to stay perfect to guarantee itself or give itself the best chance to make it to the college football playoff. So not only are you playing one of your two arch rivals in the state, but you're also playing to make sure that college football playoff committee is you're on the front of their mind, and of course 10-0 gets that accomplished. But Fish, man, I know you had a busy weekend with all the high school football games down there on Friday night, and we hope to see you up here in Tallahassee for the state championship games in a couple of weeks. But thanks for joining us, and listen, we're going to have a lot going on. We will have recruit reactions tonight and tomorrow. We will do second look Sunday. We're going to divide that up into quarters as we are going to be rotating through covering recruiting and breaking down the game tomorrow. So you'll have plenty of information at theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. We'll have Bob and Kurt and Nick's features on the game, what Mike Norvell and the players had to say, and obviously what Mario Cristobal had to say about his team's performance. But please check us out at theosceola.com. If you are not a subscriber to the Osceola, please go to theosceola.com. And if you don't subscribe to our YouTube channel, while you're here, please subscribe to our Osceola YouTube channel where you can actually sign up for alerts. We will be back on Tuesday with our college football playoff reaction. And then obviously we will wrap up Miami after all five of us have had a chance to do what we call Second Look Sunday. And that will be a live board thread tomorrow. We hope that you will interact with us there. But Florida State moves to 10-0 with a 27-20 win, 27-20 win over Miami with a really strong second half and to stay perfect on the season. Fish, have a great night, buddy.
Thanks, man. Talk to you later.
Yes, sir.